I mean, call me crazy, and some people may as well do that for having him rank this high, but from week 7 through week 18 last season, he was the RB3 on the season. And I really don't see how, with a full year of production similar to that he doesn't give us numbers just as good, if not better. Headliner Nation, the NFL draft is over. The dust has settled. Whose situation got better? Whose situation got worse? We're going to dissect all of that when we talk about my top 24 running backs. And if you haven't heard the news already, our 2024 Fantasy Football Draft Guide is already available, and it is packed full of dynasty content with tons of redraft content updating up until the start of week 1. So if you're looking to get ahead of your league mates already, head on over to thefantasyheadliners.com and order your draft guide right now. There's a link in the description down below, but if this video can get 500 likes, I'll pick someone in the comment section to get one for free. But let's kick it off with my RB1 in 2024. Of course, it's Christian McCaffrey, and as long as he stays healthy, he'll absolutely be worth the high pick that you end up using on him. Now, will he run away from the pack this year like he did last season? I highly doubt it. He's going to have some more competition for RB1 overall status, but even if he finishes as RB2 or even RB3, he'll still be worth a high draft pick. Bijan Robinson was able to rid himself of that nasty virus, Arthur Smith. So hopefully in 2024, the carousel of running backs stops and he starts to get the majority of the workload in the backfield. And not only will a ton of volume help him, but a better passing game will help him to be more efficient as well. Bijan Robinson could have a huge year in 2024. Breece Hall at RB3 makes a whole lot of sense. Over the last 5 weeks of last season, he was able to finish as an RB7 or higher 4 times. And it took him a little bit of time to get going. Working his way back from that injury can do that, but he looks strong at the end of the season. And now with Aaron Rodgers back and the passing game way better than it was last season, Breece Hall could absolutely soar this year. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to come in as my RB4. I mean, call me crazy, and some people may as well do that for having him rank this high, but from week 7 through week 18 last season, he was the RB3 on the season. And I really don't see how, with a full year of production similar to that he doesn't give us numbers just as good, if not better. And you could argue about David Montgomery getting a lot of touches, or that the passing game is going to see a lot of volume, but none of that matters for me because Jahmyr Gibbs is widely efficient, and with more consistent playing time to begin 2024, should see some big games right out of the gate. Getting a full healthy season from Jonathan Taylor would be welcome, and getting a full healthy season from Anthony Richardson would also be amazing, because with those two guys in the backfield, that is going to be an interesting concept that defenders are going to have a hard time adjusting to. The passing game with Adonai Mitchell is also going to be looking a lot better. I'm excited for what the Indianapolis Colts offense can do in 2024, and Taylor will be a big part of it. I was super excited about Kyren Williams in his rookie season, and unfortunately, it didn't happen until last year, but I am still a fan of his. And a lot of people are discounting him because they drafted Blake Corum. Listen, Corum is right behind me. I'm a huge Michigan fan. Blake Corum is one of my favorite players. He is not the type of running back that is going to steal a ton of touches from Kyren Williams. On top of that, Sean McVay is typically a one running back guy. I'm expecting another big season with maybe a little bit of volume taking away, but not enough to hurt him. The king himself, Derrick Henry, finds himself high in the rankings once again. It is hard to imagine that King Henry isn't going to have himself a huge bounce back year with this Baltimore offense. I am absolutely all on board the Henry train once again, and I think we're going to see a couple of last years of big time production before he finally starts to fall. Travis Etienne, from an efficiency standpoint last season, did struggle at times, but he saw a decent amount of volume. But there was also a lot of inefficiencies with the offense as a whole. A lot of guys being injured, Trevor Lawrence not quite being who we thought he was going to start the season, but maybe that can change a little bit. And even though Travis Etienne will likely see a few less touches this year because Doug Peterson is going to want to keep him healthy, his efficiency, if it goes back to what we saw his first couple of years in the league, he's definitely going to be a guy to watch out for. I know a lot of people are going to want to see Saquon Barkley a lot higher in my rankings. And when he signed with Philadelphia, I made the argument that I feel like he's not going to see the type of passing game work that he used to when he was with New York, and that a lot of those rushing touchdowns people are going to bank on will still end up going to Jalen Hurts. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't like Saquon Barkley, and it certainly doesn't mean that I don't think he's going to smash in Philadelphia. But I think we're going to see more of a really, really safe floor from him each week instead of a really, really high ceiling like we've become accustomed to. Rachaad White is still going to land inside my top 12, and they did use a draft pick on a running back, but really not anything that should scare anyone away from Rachaad White. Now, his efficiency is going to have to get a lot better this season, and maybe he does miss out on a few pass catching opportunities to Bucky Irving instead this year. That could end up hurting his ceiling a little bit more often. The name of the game, though, for Rachaad White: perform better on the ground as a running back instead of a receiver, and also find the end zone a little bit more often. If those things happen, he'll be just fine. I don't think things could have worked out any better than what they did for Joe Mixon. There was talk of him being released throughout the entire offseason. Free agency hits, he stays with Cincinnati until the last minute, and then he's sent out to dry, and a lot of people were left wondering, is anyone really going to try and invest in Joe Mixon? Hold the phone, because the Houston Texans jumped in right before his release and decided to trade for him instead. That's a big vote of confidence in Joe Mixon. Then they restructured his contract and gave him 3 years on it. That's a pretty big vote of confidence in Joe Mixon yet again. And he's going to be playing in an offense that may be just as good, if not better, than the offense that he would have had in Cincinnati. Let's lock Joe Mixon into a really good season. At number 12, I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs. And the reason that I don't have him a whole lot higher is because I don't think he's going to be a guy that sees 280, 290, 300 carries. I think A.J. Dillon is still going to see a few touches this year. They did re-sign him. And of course, they drafted Marshawn Lloyd as well. He should end up seeing a majority of the touches, though, and there's no reason to think that he can't finish inside the top 12. But how many rushing touchdowns will he end up scoring? If he can get from 10, 12, 13, he's definitely going to be a guy that starts pushing for the top 5 running backs. But if Jordan Love continues to throw quite a bit of touchdowns, that could end up keeping him more towards low-end RB1 status. The Chiefs' passing game looks 100 times better than it did at this point last season. Travis Kelce is back for another year. We'll see what happens with Rashee Rice. But they signed Marquise Brown to a 1-year deal and drafted Xavier Worthy. That offense is going to be flying around, and it's going to be really hard to keep up with them. So maybe they don't run the ball as much as we've seen the last couple of years, but the efficiency for Isaiah Pacheco, especially given how hard he runs, could be absolutely insane. I really only have one concern when it comes to Kenneth Walker. It's his injuries. If you could tell me that he was going to get a full, healthy 17 games this year, he would be locked in as a top 6 running back for me. Zach Charbonnet really didn't make a dent in his touches last season. It was only when Kenneth Walker got banged up that we see Charbonnet get a little bit more and a little bit more. And in 2024, I think it's going to be the same thing. Walker will be the main back. He's going to get a majority of the touches. Charbonnet is going to come in and help him out. But as long as Walker stays healthy, he stays on the field. Ramondre Stevenson upset everybody to begin last year. Let's face it, if you drafted Ramondre Stevenson, you absolutely hated the start that he got off to. But let's not forget, after week 6, he was an RB1 3 times and an RB2 twice before he ended up going down with his injury. He really started to come around at the middle of the season, and if he hadn't gotten hurt, we may have seen a lot of really good production from him down the stretch. And Bill Belichick isn't there anymore to put his sticky hands all over the backfield and rotate guys at a whim and leave us to wonder, why are people not getting more touches than what they are? Yeah, they added Antonio Gibson, but Antonio Gibson has had a few years in Washington to prove to everybody that he can could be a full-time back. And even after scoring double-digit touchdown a few years ago, he still wasn't given a full opportunity, and I highly doubt that changes in New England. The Buffalo Bills decided to add Ray Davis to their backfield in the draft, and that's not somebody that's super scary to me, but James Cook is going to have to perform a lot better. At times, he looked great last season. At other times, he did not. Buffalo would put him on the field for a whole lot, and then they would take him off the field for a while, and he just wouldn't get the touches. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. But given how much this offense has changed, Buffalo's going to have to run the football, and James Cook is going to get his shot. As long as he produces, he'll be just fine. Now, Devon Achane is still going to have Raheem Mostert there, and Raheem Mostert putting together another 17 healthy games is probably very unlikely. But Achane putting together 17 healthy games is probably unlikely as well, with as much as those two got banged up last year. And oh, by the way, they added my RB1 Jalen Wright in the draft. So Achane for me isn't about the production, it's about how long he is on the field for. And for as long as he's going to be on the field, projecting maybe a few games missed as well, he probably doesn't quite get up to being an RB1. Alvin Kamara is going to take a pretty big dip for me this year. Now in the passing game last year, he ended up doing pretty well, was getting a lot of targets after he first came back. But as the season progressed, the targets got to be a little bit less and a little bit less. And as the season progressed, he got less and less efficient in the run game as well. And that's a big problem for Kamara. And I think he's starting to run out of time in New Orleans. If he doesn't get back to being the way he was a couple of years ago, I could definitely see New Orleans starting to get Kendre Miller a few more touches. Aaron Jones had some big games last year. Aaron Jones had some good games last year. Aaron Jones missed a lot of time last year, and that's probably why Green Bay decided to move on from them and bring in Josh Jacobs instead. Now, Aaron Jones lands in a great position with Minnesota, and the great news about that is they also drafted J.J. McCarthy as their QB1, which is definitely an upgrade over any of the backups that they ended up using last season in Minnesota. Is he better than Kirk Cousins? No, but he's a lot better than what we saw at times as well. And they still have a really good receiver core there too. If Aaron Jones can stay healthy, he should end up being just fine. I do believe Ty Chandler is still going to get some looks, as he performed well at times last season too. And Minnesota is probably going to be moving them back and forth because they're going to want to keep Aaron Jones healthy. But in order to help J.J. McCarthy with his progression this coming season, it's going to be a really, really good idea to have a strong run game and rely on that as well. David Montgomery is still going to get touches. David Montgomery is still going to score touchdowns. David Montgomery is still going to score fantasy points. But make no doubt about it, this is Jahmyr Gibbs' backfield now, and David Montgomery is just living in it. James Conner had some really nice production last year, but like we talk about every season, how long does he last until he ends up getting injured? They also added Trey Benson in the draft, who is absolutely somebody that could step in during any James Conner injury, take the backfield over, and not give it back to him. Last season, DeAndre Swift played with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, some really good wide receivers on the outside, and one of the best offensive lines in football. This year, he's going to be playing with a team that has one of the worst offensive lines in football, or at least middle of the pack if you want to argue that. A rookie quarterback that, yeah, could end up being really, really good, and yeah, some comparable weapons on the outside as well. DeAndre Swift to me is a guy that's going to have some big games. He's going to win some weeks for you, but he's also a guy that if he just doesn't get it right or the offense doesn't block well enough for him, he's going to have some performances as well. My hope is that Javonte Williams is going to get back to the type of workload that we saw 2 years ago prior to his knee injury. And we know when running backs suffer significant knee injuries like that, it can take a year for them to get to be fully healthy and full strength once again. Javonte Williams is going to have to be a really big weapon for Bo Nix and this offense this year to keep the pressure off of him. But my worry is, do they have enough weapons to keep the pressure off of Williams? Zamir White is going to make it into the back end part of my top 24 here based on potential volume alone. I'm not going to go as far to say that Zamir White is a sleeper because everybody's talking about Zamir White, honestly. Now, he's going to be a guy that could be a great draft day value a little bit later. But what have we really seen from Zamir White over the course of his career? A couple good games? Can he keep it up for an entire season? What's this offense going to look like with a couple of quarterbacks that are so. There's still a lot of questions to be answered in Vegas. And you know what? There's a lot of guys that you're probably asking about right now. So let's run through just a few of them. Raheem Mostert was a great value and a league winner for a lot of you last year, but can he stay healthy all season? And now there's 2 other running backs taking carries from him. I'm not quite sure that Tony Pollard's situation this year is better than what it was last year. He may have gotten paid like an RB1, but I don't know if he produces like an RB1. With Arthur Smith being the offensive coordinator, everybody is all over Najee Harris or maybe even Jaylen Warren right now. But that's why I'm not on either of those guys being inside the top 24, because who in the world is Arthur Smith going to use on any given day? Jaylen Warren was way more efficient at times last season. I don't know if he steals the job, if Najee Harris continues to get the bulk of the carries, if they split it more. I mean, listen, he couldn't figure out Bijan Robinson last year. How is he going to figure out these guys? Brian Robinson Jr. has Austin Eckler in Washington now. Devin Singletary could end up getting a decent amount of volume, but how good will he be in that offense? And then also, I think we need to keep in mind that they've got a couple of guys behind him, Tyrone Tracy, that could end up making a run for the job as well. People are going to be asking about Nick Chubb. We have no idea when he's going to be ready to go. Zach Moss is going to get a decent amount of work, but Chase Brown should see some touches as well, and Moss wasn't really all that good at the end of the season when Taylor went down for the 2nd time. And Gus Edwards is another guy that could be in a really good position. Los Angeles is going to pound the football, but will he be the starter all year? And that's just a few of the guys that you're probably wondering about. If there's anybody else I didn't talk about, leave me a comment down below and I'll answer as many as I possibly can. And don't forget, if this video gets 500 likes, I'm going to pick one of those comments to win a free draft guide. So hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here. YouTube is probably going to recommend a past video to you here in just a second. When they do, if you've missed it, make sure you watch it right away. And for now, Headliner Nation, I'm out. Peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.